right, and yeah, we're live. Cool. Yay. All right, so Edcamp Home 2, Session 2. All right, so we're talking about healthy grading practices. In this one, something I'm super interested about, so I'm psyched to continue this on for Session 2. So we'll start with introing everybody. I'm Lindsay Cole. I teach biology up in New Hampshire, where it's like crazy negative degrees outside right now. So I'm happy I'm indoors. So yeah, so say hello, everybody.
I'm Chris Campia. I'm an English teacher in Maple Grove, Minnesota, just outside the Twin Cities. And we've got the same thing going with the cold. Our governor called a cold day on Monday, so we don't have school on Monday because of the cold. It's going to get that cold here.
I did see that on the news today for you guys. Yeah, that's crazy.
Yep.
Not quite as, yeah, you guys are definitely colder than we are right now, for sure.
My name's Laura Robertson, and I'm from Charlottesville, Virginia, where it's colder than normal, but it's nowhere near as cold as where you are.
And you guys are positive?
Yeah, and I'm the ESL director and a team American Studies teacher at an independent school.
Cool. Jump right in, anybody?
My name is Lisa Nowakowski. I'm currently in California, but I'm originally from Detroit, and I'm super happy to be out in California and not in Detroit where it's super cold. I teach 5th grade.
Cool.
I'm Tiffany Freeman. I teach 4th grade reading and language arts and social studies. I live in Mobile, Alabama, where it's colder than usual. It's down in the 20s. And I teach in Gulfport, Mississippi, where it's actually also down in the 20s, and I'm on the coast. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Liza. I'm from Highland, Illinois, which is near St. Louis. We're getting ready for a big snowstorm here also. I teach high school integrated science and chemistry.
Cool. Awesome, awesome. Well, good. Hi, Liza. It's good to see you again. Yeah. Cool. All right. So, yeah. So, did we get it, everybody? I think we did. Cool. Yeah. Chatting about grading. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but it's sort of been one of my really huge concerns, but things I want to tackle a lot this year is about sort of the purpose of it. What are the best ways to go? Because, you know, for you guys, and I'm not sure how you guys grade, but my students get very point focused versus the learning focused piece, and really trying to pull and get ideas of how to switch that thinking. I mean, really. So those are things I'm just looking to grab ideas and chat about and see what's, you know, going on in all of your places and look at it from the perspective. I'm glad we have elementary here too, to kind of see what's going on at the elementary, you know, on all levels, and just look kind of vertically at grading as a whole, you know. Mm-hmm.
In my division, I teach high school, and I teach at an independent school where kids are really focused on college, and the pressure to inflate grades is so extreme that really at some point grades stop mattering, except for that a kid feels like if they get a B+, they're never going to go to college. We do struggle with the kind of getting them to focus on learning instead of on achieving a certain point score. Some of my colleagues do that by leaving grades off of their papers. Others, you know, we tend to get kids to really try hard and tell them, you know, like they can get some points for whimsy, so never to leave something blank. And we try to be as supportive in our grading as we can. But again, like the scale is so small now, it's really like, you know, a B+ through an A. And I don't know what you do about that other than maybe move away from grading altogether, which I would be fine with.
Right? Yeah. You know,
Well,
you just want them to trust you. Like, this is cool because it is.
It's definitely a mind shift moving from grading to focusing on the learning. My district is a standards-based grading district, and we've been doing SBG for 5 years now, I think. We actually have just started calling it SBL, standards-based learning, to take the focus off of the grading. Every assessment, every activity that we do has to be tied to one of our standards, whether it's formative or summative, has to be tied to a standard. And the whole idea is to give feedback for the practice before the actual big summative assessment. We also grade on a 0 to 4 scale, and that is really hard for students also to deal with. They want to know, well, okay, how do I get an A? Well, it's not really about the A. It's about, are you proficient? Are you meeting the standard? Are you exceeding or excelling at the standard? And so that's the conversation that we have, more than what about, you know, is it an A, is it a B, is it a C?
I wish the district that I'm currently in could get to that point. I recently changed districts, and the district I was in, I was really on the committee moving towards standards-based learning and grading. And I have come to a district, and I've entered a classroom again after nearly 3 years being out of the classroom and having more of a say in those administrative type decisions about grading practices for a district. And now I'm in my little classroom, and what I'm finding is these students get failing grades in the elementary schools, and that is like a district-wide practice, and it's really blowing my mind. I'm coming from a district that had a 10-point grading scale and was moving towards standards-based grading on a 0 to 4 point scale, and I was really excited about that, moving to where everything is graded, and, you know, there is no, you know, extra anything. You get what you make. If you made a 13 on that assignment, that is what goes in the grade book, and it really breaks my heart because, you know, the focus is more on comparing students to one another. And, you know, and it's not really about whether I'm actually learning what needs to be learned. It's more about the assignment. And the focuses are, you know, not on student learning. It's on, this is the assignment that I made, and let me see how well you did on this assignment that I made. Not, you know, whether or not you can use commas correctly. It's, you know, how well you did on this worksheet compared to everybody else. And it's really heartbreaking.
Right, and you find when students, if you end up in that, you're going to get, or at least I know I see my students tossing in the towel a lot sooner when they feel like they've dug such a hole that they can't get out of it, and because all they do see is that number. You know, whether or not you can say, look, we've got all these things coming up, and there's ways for you to learn more and show that you've learned, but, you know, they see that number, and if that number is low, you know, they're like, why bother trying? And so you start losing students, you know, especially as we come into this time of year where we're a couple weeks out for us from our, you know, midterm exams. I've already got students feeling like, you know, I'm done with this, you know, and it's tough because to get them to pull them back in and say, we're not even halfway through yet, but, you know, they see that one thing and can't seem to figure out how to get them, you know, get out of it, because it's like, here are these points. I just want to see that number go higher. I don't really care about learning biology. I care about what that number says, you know. So it's, for me, been trying to, you know, how do we focus that change, you know, in that mindset, you know, to say, let's figure out how we learn this, you know, and let's focus on the learning. And once we get focused on the learning, then the grading, you know, the grade changes, you know, because of that. So, and that's where it can get kind of frustrating, and, you know, it does. It breaks your heart for sure. So.
Lindsay, do you let your kids retake quizzes and things? Maybe not tests, but have you done any allowing them retakes or redos on stuff?
Yeah, with our exams, we do. I do a couple of things depending on what the course is. In our college prep biology, we do some. We do offer retake options on the exams and give them an opportunity to, you know, re-show what they've learned, you know, in that particular unit. quizzes, not so much, because they're just snippets. They're not worth a whole lot. And I've toyed around with the idea on quizzes as to whether or not, you know, because we're so lab heavy that the quizzes aren't happening a ton. In my advanced, I tried, instead of doing a full, like, whole retake on an exam, what I decided to do was to let them take the exam itself that they did, and anything they got wrong, any aspect of it, they would go back in and, you know, rework on that part and start writing out or working on what was the right answer, and not only what was the right answer, but why it was the right answer, and kind of pushing to that way to kind of credit recovery, redo kind of thing, versus, okay, focus on what you guys didn't know versus what's ever, you know, just having to redo everything in case, you know, here's the stuff you already know. I want to see what, you know, let's learn what we didn't know or didn't understand as well. So I've done both of those, and I know my kids in the advanced bio like that option a lot more than worrying about having to redo stuff, and I think they feel it a little less time wasting for them, because they can focus on the things they weren't as sure about. So that's kind of how we've done it a little bit more. Labs, you know, when we're working on labs, it's, you know, they're doing the lab stuff, and we might have, you know, a lab practical piece to the exam and stuff like that. So that's kind of how we're doing it now, and that's, you know, been changing a little bit. But so I see that as being a help, you know, for them. So for sure.
I've let mine redo quizzes in my honors level class. And it seems to, I know they're still focused on the grade, and we're trying to get that shift to where they want to show that they actually learned it, not just improve their grade. But it seems like it's helped a little bit, and even with some of the kids that have some anxiety, they've gotten to where they sit down and take the quiz, and they'll say, no, we get to retake this, right, if we don't do well on it. And that, I think them just knowing that they have that opportunity, you know, even if they're not going to need it, I think them just knowing that that's not the final, you know, end-all grade for them, it's helped a little bit.
Did you find that it actually, like, does it, having that option, do you think they are relying on, do you think the lessening of the anxiety is actually helping them do better the first time around? Or do you, I mean, it's maybe hard to say.
The kids, they have to schedule time to come in and do that. So it's, I don't see, and they're honors kids, so I don't see a lot of them just not preparing at all for the quiz, knowing they can retake it. But I think it does, they actually end up doing better even though they know they have that opportunity.
And we've had where it's the first thing a student will ask is, when's the retake? Before they've even taken the summative, and that's become really frustrating. I'm really fortunate in that I teach English, so I don't give redos for students. What I built into each summative is that there's time for feedback. I'm constantly giving feedback. Students can contact me via email. They can contact me over Twitter, before school time, after school time, and I build that in while we're working on whatever project, assignment leading up to the summative, so the students get the help ahead of time so that there's no need for a redo on the summative. And so that's how I've explained that to students. I've explained that to parents, and parents have had, you know, and parents are often the ones who have the biggest issue with standards-based grading, and I haven't had any problems with that. But again, that works really well with English because I can put off or give extended time on specific assignments.
At my grade level, I'm finding, too, that it's the parents that have more of an issue with the standards-based grading than the kids. The kids just kind of roll with it and they understand. I'm trying to do the Marzano scales of 0 to 4. And, you know, and my principal's all for it, and he's trying to institute that in our school. We're a magnet school. So we have a little bit more leeway to do those things and get away from the actual grade that the rest of the district can give. But it's parents that have the problem. I had a parent contact me last night because I was grading something, and they said, oh, my child wants to correct the mistake. I'm like, well, they got a, you know, a 3 is grade level, you know, is passing, and so they got a 3.5. It's okay, but they're still looking for that, you know, I want 4 out of 4. I want, you know, the highest you can get. It's okay.
Right. Yeah, I'm not sure it's the kids so much we have to worry in terms of the grading a little bit, but more about the parents. I mean, that's what we're used to, that's how we're used to grading thing. We grew up that way. Parents are, what does that mean? They got this, they want to say, okay, is that an A? Is that a B? What's that mean? To say that they were, they're making progress in a particular area, or they're proficient, or they've exceeded the expectation, so, it's not just working on our kids and changing their mindset, but really getting it out to the parents as well. And I think that's, a critical piece, for sure, is to get the parents involved in that change in the discussion as well. So, and getting it started early, like, fourth, fifth grade, and stuff, because it can, moving from one school to a next can be, a big shift for a student too. How things are done in an elementary school differs significantly, from once you get to middle school and to high school, and even as our kids go on to college too, so cool.
What are the challenges to implementing standards-based grading, especially like when you're the only person maybe in the whole district that wants to grade that way? Because I think in the district where I am, it's like a culture of we like the way that it's currently done and we're not changing. And so I'm just trying to figure out how I can implement better grading practices in my classroom, because it seems like every assignment is supposed to be graded, and doesn't matter whether the students were ready for the assessment. We assess because time has passed, because it's been a week, and we test on Tuesdays, and so it's time for a test, even if you're not ready for it. So I'm just trying to figure out how, with those challenges and constraints, I can implement some better grading practices, like I said, at the fourth grade level.
Well, my first thought is, how have you talked with your administrator about it and brought in, Marzano, Stiggins, Reeves, all of the research that talks about how important it is to focus on the learning and not just on the grading, and that what is the purpose for the assignment, what is the purpose for the test, and maybe talking with your administrator and just having some informal conversations with colleagues. There might be someone else sitting in that building that works with you that is just thinking the same thing, and starting in your own room, maybe getting a couple of other people to work with you, and make sure your administrator's on board. But it just takes one person.
Yeah, she is, because I asked before I started, because I actually started in the middle of the year trying to cut my commute in half. And I was coming from, like I said, more of an administrative role where I was in the central office. And so, she's totally on board with whatever I want to do in my classroom. But as far as changing the culture of the school, I think that's more of a challenge, because, like I said, things are the way they are. I haven't been in a school district in 10 years of teaching where it's okay to give students any less than a 50 or 60, because it's so hard to come back from a 13, But, those types of things that are just embedded in the culture of not just the school but the district are some of the challenges. But, she's like, okay, if you want to do that in your classroom, then that's fine. Of course, it will have to be converted to a number grade, a numerical grade to input into the grade book system. And, that's fine. I can do all of the conversions, but really just trying to figure out how to, because these students have already been indoctrinated, really, because those types of grading practices, they're used to flunking first grade, third grade, because they've made, 25, 32, and those grades have gone in the grade book. And so I don't even know how to address that with the students, just getting a total paradigm shift to say, this is what the focus has been on. The focus has been on this test or this worksheet, and what I really want to focus on is whether or not you can, use commas correctly, or you can recognize a run-on sentence and correct it, focus on the learning rather than, or the task rather than the assignment or how well I did compared to this other student, because they're obsessed with numbers and my reading level, and this is my AR level, and those types of things. And it's really mind-blowing, because I've never been in a situation like that.
In my classroom, I put up some of the scales. So if we're working on decimals or whatever. I have a scale in my classroom that says this is what I expect you to know, and we did. I do more projects now, not project-based learning, but projects. I want to move into project-based learning. So that's going to help. Of like, if you want to get a 4 or a 3, excuse me, this is what you need to do. And so it's kind of already out there for them. Have you tried maybe? And you're great that your administrator's on board. Like maybe like a pilot program in your school that says, well, let's try this and kind of share out your success with other teachers in your school. Maybe that'll help.
It could. I don't even know where to start. You know, just because things are so different from anything I've ever experienced. Where, you know, it's hard when even the students have that mindset already, and you know, they want to know, you know, if there's going to be extra credit, or you know, how can I get my AR level up, or you know, they're so just numbers focused and numbers oriented. I don't know where to begin the communication with the students or the parents or, you know, other colleagues. I'm just not really
students. I think they'll be the easiest to not convince, but to realize, okay, there's a different way and I can find success this way. I think they'll be the easier ones.
Right. And Tiffany, are you guys doing Common Core? Are you adopting Common Core?
Yes, we have the pleasure of teaching both Common Core and our state standards this year.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So, but you know, in terms of wondering, could you take maybe smaller assignment, you know, start kind of smaller and start kind of building them in a little bit, where, you know, maybe take a particular assignment, link it to a couple of the Common Core standards, where that can be sort of a jump off to standards-based, you know, see how those go with the student, you know, hey, here's this assignment, you know, and kind of, you know, and you can work it in while, you know, we're going to be adopting these, you know, whatever, but, and say, you know, saying, okay, this assignment, this is how we're going to look at, did you hit this piece? Where are you here? And you say, oh, wow, you guys are doing great maybe on these, and just put a couple of standards to them. You know, that, you know, this particular piece is really cool, and you guys are hitting this, but wow, it looks like we need a little work here. Let's focus on that. And then that might actually, you know, in some ways, you know, can kind of steer a little bit of how you're taking the students too. So I would suggest, you know, maybe starting a little bit early, you know, or not early, but little. Start smaller before you try, you know, to go big. And then, you know, as the students, you get more buy-in from the students on it, you know, then, okay, start branching it out a little bit. Or, you know, hey, we'll start trying it here. Or if there's one class that you have, that's one section of a class, you know, you're the only one who teaches that particular section. I did that when I started, I used Flip Class and Flip Learning, and I had one course that it was just me teaching it. So I said, you know what, you guys are my guinea pigs, basically, and I jumped in with them first before I branched out to all of my courses, you know, that I wasn't the sole teacher on. So.
Well, I just have the 2 classes, but, you know, I have a few challenges. Like I said, we're doing both sets of standards. I didn't start with this class until almost October, so we're really behind, and we're already teaching to the test for PARC. We're doing the module planning guide based on what PARC has said should be tested, and so we've already narrowed the curriculum to the point that it's not really recognizable to the original intent of the standards. So we've just got lots of things going on, and I'm just trying to figure out where, you know, maybe I could do it for one unit or a project, or, you know, what resources have you found that are useful to get started with standards-based grading or standards-based learning?
One of the things I was just thinking about, you said, and this breaks my heart, that you have first and second graders who are sitting at a 25% or a 13%. When we first looked at standards-based grading in my district, we played with, you know, well, what do the numbers mean? And we decided on a 0 to 4 scale, because what that does is eliminates the giant F. Right. Everything below a 60% is a, you know, it's a huge hole for a student to come out of. Right. So maybe the place to start is, if you have to stick with percentages, 90, 80, 70, 60, and down, maybe everything that you grade is 50 to 100%. And so if a student gets 13 out of 20 or whatever, you know, gets a 13 on a test, they automatically get 50% in the grade book.
And that's
And
what
then
I've
that
been
whole
doing.
isn't as big.
Right, that's what I've been doing because our scale is actually 69 and below is an F. And I'm saying, well, if you know 69% of the material, is that really an F?
Wow.
And so, I've really been trying to say, okay, well, what did the student that scored the highest do? And I'm trying to, add up, and then I don't let anybody get below a 50, but at the same time, I don't want to be artificially inflating the grades.
Right.
But I also want the grades to reflect what the student knows and can do. But like I said, we're really looking at the assignment versus the standard. We're doing common assessments that are mixed practice tests, and these standards include things that were there the first term when I wasn't there, and the students might not have mastered. And it could be new information because I have the lower end of all of the 6 classes for our grade. I have the 2 lowest classes, and so some of the other teachers are teaching standards that my students are not yet ready for, and so I'm teaching something completely different. So I'm just, I'm at a loss. I'm at a loss.
Can you have the students maybe do some self-tracking and maybe just, to kind of, I'm familiar with standards-based grading, but we haven't used it, but maybe have them do a little bit of tracking with just either below, meets, or exceeds so they don't get as focused on those numbers, and maybe that, if they're below, it's just below and they can see that they can move up instead of focusing on, I got a 13% on this, which is a terrible F and I'm never going to come out of it. Maybe they, kept track of some of those things themselves as you did some of your practice to lead up to the assessment. They could kind of see themselves making progress, and maybe that would help so they didn't feel as hopeless.
That's actually a good idea, to start having the students do a little self, in some cases self-grading, where do you see yourself, do you think you've hit it? Not, why? And they can do maybe a little reflective practice as well as a result of it, and then that could be actually a pretty good start off for them, because then they can grab some ownership in it. So yeah, I like that. I like that a lot.
I think what I want to do is go to my principal and say, instead of my students doing this 30-item test every Tuesday that may or may not have things that my students are familiar with, can I say, okay, these are the standards we covered. Here are a couple of standard sample items, that say this is what you should be able to do, and if they're able to do it, hey, you've mastered it, and rate them on that scale. Would that be something that sounds like it would be better grading practices than what is currently going on?
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah. No,
that
I
could
think
work.
That sounds really good. So I think we're going to have about 1 more minute before I'm supposed to call it a day for us. So any other things people want to add before we wrap things up?
That's it.
I think it's just important to start having the conversation, having the conversation about what's best for students.
Yeah. Yeah, keeping that in mind, what's going to be the best thing for them in the long run. And I think you can't go wrong if you keep them at the forefront of your mind, in the first place. Oh, all right. Well, thank you all. So I think we'll call it a shot on session 2 for our Edcamp, and I know they're kind of getting ready to wrap things up and getting ready to slam something. I'm not sure what that is. So anyway, take it easy.
They're just going to show us the coolest, geekiest thing they can think of.
Yep.
Sweet. Thank you. That's what it is. All right. I'm like, slamming. What are we slamming? Cool. All right. Well, thank you guys. It was great chatting with you. And
thank you. Everybody,
see you all around.
Stay warm.
Thanks.
Yeah, definitely stay warm, everybody. Take care.
Okay.
Bye-bye.